In the archives long forgotten by the Wisconsin Diocese lies a document collection that the Catholic Church has attempted to conceal for more than 160 years. These records detail the systematic vanishing of 23 nuns from the St. Mary's Convent near Lake Michigan between 1854 and 1862. Church officials have dismissed these papers as mere misinterpretations and administrative errors, yet the testimony of 3 separate diocesan inspectors, combined with a cache of private correspondence recently found in a sealed wall cavity during building renovations, reveals a story so terrible that even veteran historians have doubted whether such wickedness could truly take root within consecrated walls. What you're about to hear is the first complete account of what many believe to be the most disturbing case of religious corruption in American history. A case the Catholic Church has spent a fortune ensuring would never reach you. The request and the setting. Before we continue with the story of St. Mary's Convent, I must ask, if you're already finding this tale unsettling, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel for more historically accurate narratives of America's darkest religious secrets. Our community of mystery seekers stretches across all 50 states. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment below. Now, let's return to the Wisconsin countryside of 1854, the place where our story begins. Arrival and opposition. Bishop William Quarter's carriage rolled through the gates of what would become St. Mary's Convent as the morning fog hung heavily over Lake Michigan. The Catholic Church had bought the vast property, a former lumber baron's mansion surrounded by 30 acres of thick woodland, intending to establish the first major Catholic institution in the largely Protestant Wisconsin territory. This planned expansion was a calculated part of a larger effort to establish Catholic influence in America's rapidly developing frontier regions, where Protestant denominations were already securing significant footholds. The limestone mansion, with its 3 prominent wings and bell tower, presented a stark contrast to the modest wooden churches that dotted the Wisconsin landscape. Constructed in 1842, the central building featured narrow windows and Gothic arches that seemed to observe the surrounding countryside like watchful eyes. 2 wings extended from each side. The east wing was designated for the nuns' quarters, and the west for the proposed infirmary and orphanage. Behind the main structure stood a small chapel, its spire rising above the treetops, visible for miles across the flat Wisconsin plains. Local Protestant families regarded the newly arrived nuns with suspicion. Their Irish accents and black habits marked them as outsiders in a community primarily settled by German and Scandinavian immigrants. The region's residents, mainly Methodist and Lutheran, were accustomed to the simple, democratic structure of their own religious communities. The hierarchical nature of Catholicism, with its secrets and rituals, felt threatening and foreign. On the day the convent was consecrated, a small group gathered outside the gates. "Papists," muttered Elijah Hoffman, a respected elder at the local Lutheran church, as he watched the black-robed figures process into the chapel. "They'll bring their foreign ways here, they'll corrupt our children with their idolatry." His companion, Wilhelm Schmidt, gave a grim nod. "My grandfather fled Germany to escape the Catholics' persecution. Now, they pursue us even here." This feeling, while not universal, mirrored the deep-seated religious tensions that would form the foundation for the upcoming tragedy. Leadership and staff. "St. Mary's will serve as a beacon of God's mercy in this wilderness," Bishop Quarter announced at the consecration ceremony to the small gathering of local dignitaries and clergy. His voice echoed through the newly completed chapel, where morning light filtered through simple stained glass windows, casting colored light pools across the wooden pews. Under the guidance of Mother Superior Catherine Murphy, this convent will offer comfort to widows, shelter to orphans, and healing to the sick. The bishop's Boston accent resonated off the stone walls as he introduced the 3 women who were set to lead the convent: Mother Superior Catherine, Sister Elizabeth Foster, and Sister Margaret Clark, all from established convents back east. Mother Superior Catherine, tall and imposing in her starched black habit, commanded instant respect with her penetrating gaze and sharp features. At 42, she carried herself with the assuredness of a woman used to authority. Her hands, when raised in prayer, were strong but elegant, hands that appeared equally capable of disciplining a wayward novice or comforting a child. Those who met her frequently noted her eyes, an unusual pale blue that seemed to see through pretense. "Mother Catherine comes to us with the highest recommendations," the bishop went on. Her work at St. Augustine's in Boston has prepared her well for the challenges of frontier religious life. Sister Elizabeth, 38, with her perpetual smile and soft voice, was slated to oversee the orphanage. Maternal and plump, with gentle hands and rosy cheeks, she seemed perfectly suited to the care of abandoned children. When she spoke, it was always with a slight pause, as if carefully considering every word, a characteristic many initially mistook for thoughtfulness rather than calculation. Sister Margaret, 35, would establish the infirmary with her extensive knowledge of herbal remedies. Tall and thin, with a serious demeanor and nimble fingers, she carried herself with the precision of someone who measured medicines by the drop. Her dark eyes missed nothing, and her knowledge of both modern and traditional medical practices had made an impression on physicians in New York and Boston. The founding community was completed by 20 younger nuns, most in their 20s and newly arrived from Ireland. They stood in a perfectly straight line, heads bowed in appropriate humility, habits crisp, as Bishop Quarter blessed each by name: Sister Mary Collins, Sister Teresa Donovan, Sister Bernadette Walsh, Sister Agnes O'Connor, young women who had left their homeland and family to serve God in a new, unfamiliar country. During the ceremony, their faces, though solemn, occasionally betrayed their uncertainty and youth when they thought no one was watching. Early days and a glimpse of unease. "The Lord has called us to this wilderness," Mother Catherine addressed her sisters that first evening, candlelight casting long shadows across the refectory. The air was heavy with the smell of weak tea and fresh bread, and the chill of the Wisconsin autumn seeped through the stone walls despite the large fireplace at the room's end. "We will face hardships unknown to our Eastern counterparts. We will encounter suspicion from those who fear our faith. But through sacrifice and devotion, we shall overcome." The young nuns, far from family and home, clung to her words like a lifeline in this strange new world. "Do you think the locals will ever accept us?" Sister Agnes whispered to Sister Bernadette as they prepared for bed that night. Their narrow cots were separated by barely an arm's length in the dormitory-style sleeping quarters. Her voice slightly trembled, betraying the brave face she'd kept up all day. Sister Bernadette squeezed her hand in the darkness. "They feared our Lord, too, at first. We must show them through our works that we mean only good." The whispered conversation ended suddenly at the sound of footsteps in the corridor, Mother Catherine making her rounds, ensuring everything was in order on their first night. The convent quickly established itself as a functioning religious community. The daily cycle of prayers began with matins at 3 a.m., the tolling bells cutting through the pre-dawn darkness, summoning sleepy nuns from warm beds to the cold chapel floors. The distinctive drone of Latin chants filled the chapel 7 times daily, from those early morning prayers right through to Compline at 9 p.m. The sound became as much a part of the local landscape as the distant lowing of cattle or the wind through the pines. Between prayers, the nuns maintained extensive vegetable gardens, tended the sick in a modest infirmary, and operated a small orphanage for abandoned children. Their days followed a strict rhythm: work, prayer, simple meals, brief recreation, more prayer, a schedule designed to focus the mind on service and God rather than individual desire or comfort. By the winter of 1854, the orphanage housed 12 children, mostly the offspring of Irish immigrant laborers who had perished in lumber or railway accidents. Sister Elizabeth oversaw their care with apparent tenderness, teaching basic letters and numbers alongside Catholic doctrine. On Sundays, local families would sometimes visit after Mass, occasionally inquiring about adoption and bringing small treats for the children. Sister Margaret's infirmary started modestly but quickly earned the respect of local families. Her knowledge of traditional remedies, herbal teas for fevers, poultices for inflammation, special compresses for chest ailments, proved effective, particularly during the harsh Wisconsin winter when doctor visits necessitated dangerous travel through snow-choked roads. Their self-sufficiency impressed even the most skeptical neighbors, and the local attitude gradually shifted from suspicion to grudging respect. "They keep to themselves, but they do good work," Elijah Hoffman grudgingly admitted to his congregation after Sister Margaret successfully treated his grandson's persistent cough. "Their ways are not our ways, but perhaps there is room for different paths to heaven in this big country." The cracks appear. Sister Agnes O'Connor, Sister Josephine Brady's hand shook as she attempted to darn a tear in her habit one evening in January 1855. Having accidentally broken silence during afternoon prayers with a sudden cough, she had been assigned to kneel on dried peas while reciting the entire rosary, a penance that left her knees swollen and bleeding. Sister Mary Collins helped her thread the needle, their eyes meeting in a moment of silent sympathy. "Do not draw attention to her weakness," Mother Catherine's voice cut through the quiet workroom, causing both women to startle. She had entered silently, a skill that increasingly unnerved the younger nuns. "Sister Josephine must learn that discipline is the cornerstone of devotion. Each of you would do well to remember that." By the spring of 1855, St. Mary's had established a reputation for exceptional charity. When a measles epidemic swept through the nearby lumber camps, Sister Margaret's infirmary treated dozens of workers, regardless of their faith. The convent began receiving modest donations from grateful families, and even Protestant ministers acknowledged the good work being done behind those limestone walls. What no one outside the convent realized was that life inside St. Mary's was changing in subtle, disturbing ways. The communal meals had become increasingly silent affairs, with nuns keeping their eyes fixed on their plates of plain bread or bowls of thin soup. The recreation hour, once filled with occasional laughter and quiet conversation, became muted and tense. Young women who had crossed an ocean together, bonded by shared faith and purpose, now moved like shadows, careful not to attract attention. The first disappearances. The first strange event occurred in April 1855 when Sister Agnes failed to appear for morning prayers. Her absence was immediately noticed, one empty place in the chapel where 20 nuns should stand in perfect formation. The other sisters exchanged quick, concerned glances as Mother Catherine entered, her expression unreadable in the dim candlelight. "Sister Agnes has been called to assist at our mission in Minnesota," Mother Catherine announced to the bewildered community at breakfast. Her tone permitted no questions. Her departure was sudden, as such callings often are. "We shall all pray for her success in this new endeavor." Sister Bernadette spoon clattered against her bowl. "But Mother, she said nothing to me, and she fell silent as Mother Catherine's pale eyes fixed on her face. "Are you suggesting, Sister Bernadette, that a bride of Christ requires permission from her fellows rather than her superiors before answering God's call?" The question hung in the air like frost. "No, Mother. Forgive me." Sister Bernadette lowered her eyes to her cooling porridge. No one had seen Sister Agnes leave or pack, and she had mentioned no transfer in her letters home. But in the strict hierarchy of convent life, no one dared to question Mother Superior's explanation further. That evening in the dormitory, several nuns noted that Sister Agnes's few belongings, the extra woolen stockings for Wisconsin winters, the small wooden rosary her mother had given her, her prayer book, were gone, as if she had indeed departed and packed. But Sister Mary Collins, whose cot had been next to Agnes's, whispered to Sister Teresa Donovan during their brief moments alone in the garden, her cloak still hung on its peg. Would she have left without it in April in Minnesota? Sister Teresa glanced nervously toward the convent windows. Perhaps she was given a new one for the journey. "We should not speculate, Sister." 3 months later, Sister Bernadette Walsh vanished in a similar fashion. "The bishop has requested Sister Bernadette's assistance with a delicate matter in Chicago," Mother Catherine explained. She left before dawn to catch the early train. Again, no warning, no farewell, just a hastily provided explanation and an empty cell. This time, Sister Elizabeth elaborated during the nuns' work period. Sister Bernadette showed such skill with the orphans that the bishop has requested she help establish proper procedures at the new foundling home in Chicago. Her voice carried the appropriate mix of pious acceptance and pride, but Sister Mary noticed that her usually warm eyes remained cold as she spoke. The silence and the fear. By the winter of 1855, 3 more nuns had transferred to distant missions. Each departure followed the same pattern: a young nun, usually one who had drawn attention for her gentle nature or beauty, would simply fail to appear one morning. Mother Catherine would announce her reassignment, always to a location too distant for easy verification. Letters sent by worried families to these supposed new assignments would return months later with brief, oddly formal responses that offered few details of their new lives. When examined years later by handwriting experts, the responses would all be identified as written by the same person, not the missing nuns themselves. Sister Teresa Donovan was one of the few who dared to voice concerns. Tall and strong from years of farm work before taking her vows, she had a directness unusual in convent life and had already drawn Mother Catherine's disapproval for questioning the increasing severity of penances assigned to younger nuns. It seems strange that Rome would request so many transfers without proper documentation, she whispered to Sister Mary Collins as they worked in the garden in the summer of 1856, their fingers stained with soil as they harvested early carrots. That year, the garden had expanded with a new section dedicated to medicinal herbs that Sister Margaret tended personally behind a high fence that none but she and Mother Catherine could enter. "And have you noticed it's always the youngest and prettiest who are called away?" Sister Teresa continued, her Irish brogue thickening as it always did when she was upset. First Agnes with her golden hair, then Bernadette with that lovely singing voice, then Catherine with her perfect complexion, and Josephine with her, she trailed off as a shadow fell across the garden bed. Sister Mary immediately hushed her, glancing nervously toward the convent windows, where Sister Margaret stood watching, her thin face expressionless. "Mother Catherine has her reasons. We must trust in her wisdom." The following week, Sister Teresa was gone. "Call to a contemplative retreat in Montreal" was the official explanation provided at morning prayers. Sister Mary, now thoroughly frightened, kept her thoughts to herself and her head down. That evening, as she made her bed, she found a small piece of paper tucked beneath her pillow, a page torn from Sister Teresa's prayer book with a hastily scrolled message in the margin: "Something is wrong. If I disappear, tell Father Ryan." The sight of her friend's handwriting, the ink still relatively fresh, sent a chill through Sister Mary that had nothing to do with the autumn air seeping through the stone walls. By 1857, the pattern inside the convent walls had become impossible to ignore. Of the original 20 junior nuns, only 12 remained. The official explanations continued: transfers to nursing positions during disease outbreaks, special missions, retreats. To the outside world, St. Mary's appeared to function normally. Local families still brought sick relatives to Sister Margaret's infirmary. Orphans still received care in Sister Elizabeth's orphanage. Sunday visitors saw nothing amiss in the solemn processions of black-clad figures moving from refectory to garden to chapel. But inside those limestone walls, fear had become a tangible presence. The remaining nuns spoke in whispers, avoided being alone, and watched in terror as their numbers dwindled. Mother Catherine's leadership grew more authoritarian. Minor infractions of convent rules led to severe penances, nights spent in prayer on cold stone floors, days of fasting, public confessions of increasingly intimate sins. Sister Claire O'Donnell, discovered with a small piece of chocolate sent by her family, was forced to kneel before the entire community and confess to deception and gluttony unworthy of a bride of Christ. Mother Catherine assigned her to fast for 3 days, taking only water and a single piece of bread at the evening meal. When Sister Claire fainted during chapel prayers on the second day, it was Sister Margaret who revived her with smelling salts. Her thin lips curved in what some later described as a smile. The overheard secret. One unusually cold night in January 1858, Sister Mary Collins woke up to muffled sounds coming from the cell next to hers. Through the thin wall, she could hear Sister Rebecca Murphy sobbing, followed by a sharp whisper she recognized as Mother Catherine's voice. "You will come with us now. Make any noise and you'll regret it." Shuffling feet followed, then silence. Sister Mary lay frozen in her narrow bed, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would betray her wakefulness. The floorboards in the corridor creaked. 3 sets of footsteps, 1, 2, 3, moving away from Sister Rebecca's cell. Then a sound that would haunt Sister Mary's dreams for years, a muffled cry quickly silenced, followed by what sounded like a body being dragged rather than walking of its own accord. The next morning, Mother Catherine announced that Sister Rebecca had been called to serve at a frontier mission in the Dakota Territory. The native children there require instruction, and Sister Rebecca's patience with the orphans has prepared her well for this holy task. Mother Catherine's pale eye swept the refectory, lingering momentarily on Sister Mary. We shall miss her gentle presence but rejoice in God's purpose for her talents. Shaking with fear, Sister Mary managed to maintain her composure through morning prayers. Her mind raced with terrible possibilities, her rosary beads clicking between trembling fingers as she mouthed the familiar prayers. What had happened to all the others? What had happened to Sister Rebecca? That afternoon, while sweeping the corridor outside Mother Catherine's office, she overheard a disturbing conversation. The heavy oak door was not quite closed, and voices carried clearly to where Sister Mary stood, her dust brush suddenly motionless in her hand. "The doctor says, this one will fetch a higher price." Sister Elizabeth's usually gentle voice had taken on a cold, calculating tone that Sister Mary wouldn't have recognized had she not been listening at that very door. "He says, men pay extra for the innocent ones. We need to be more careful with the timing," Sister Margaret replied, the clinking sound of glass suggesting she was organizing her medicines as she spoke. 3 in 1 month raises questions. The bishop's secretary mentioned it in his last letter. The bishop is easily managed. Mother Catherine's dismissive laugh sent chills down Sister Mary's spine. Another donation to his cathedral fund, and his questions will disappear. Besides, we've established the pattern well enough. No one questions nuns being sent to frontier missions or succumbing to illness during their charitable work. "What about the Collins girl?" Sister Margaret asked, her voice dropping lower. "She watches too closely. I've seen her listening at doors." A moment of silence followed, during which Sister Mary's heart nearly stopped. "We'll wait," Mother Catherine finally replied. "She's too plain to fetch much, and she has that correspondence with her brother in the seminary. Disappearing too many at once attracts attention. Rebecca will keep the doctor's clients satisfied for now." Sister Mary fled before she could be discovered. Her mind raced. Who was this doctor? What terrible fate had befallen Sister Rebecca just last night? What had happened to her missing sisters? The pieces began to fall into a terrible place in her mind: the strange visits from well-dressed benefactors who toured the convent with Mother Catherine, the missing nuns, always the most attractive and youngest, the growing wealth of the convent despite its supposedly humble means, the unexplained sound sometimes heard from the locked north wing at night. The desperate plea. After a sleepless night of deliberation and prayer, Sister Mary made a desperate decision. During her weekly duty collecting eggs from the chicken coop, the only time she was permitted beyond the convent walls without supervision, she slipped a hastily written note into the pocket of Jimmy Fletcher, the 12-year-old son of a local farmer who delivered milk to the convent each morning. Jimmy's eyes widened as Sister Mary's hand brushed his pocket. The rules forbade casual conversation with outsiders, especially males of any age, and she had never spoken to him directly before. "Please deliver this to Father Thomas at St. Joseph's Church in town," she whispered, pressing a small silver cross into the boy's hand. The cross, the only item of value she possessed, had been her confirmation gift. "Tell no one else. Lives depend on it." The boy nodded solemnly, his freckled face serious beyond his years. "Yes, sister, I promise." The note, which has been preserved in diocesan records, simply read, "Something evil happens at St. Mary's nuns disappearing, not sent away as claimed. I fear for my life. Please send help. Sister Mary Collins." The unresponsive bishop. Father Thomas Ryan, the young Irish priest who received the note, had always harbored reservations about Mother Catherine. During his monthly visits to offer Mass at the convent, he had noticed the dwindling number of nuns and found Mother Catherine's explanations vague and inconsistent. But as a mere parish priest, he had limited authority to question a Mother Superior. Father Ryan paced his small study, the worn floorboards creaking beneath his feet as he reread the desperate message from Sister Mary. The silver cross lay heavy in his palm. He recognized it as the type given to young women at confirmation, not something a nun would part with lightly. The urgency of the message, combined with his own growing concerns, demanded action. But what action could he take against a Mother Superior, especially one as well connected as Catherine Murphy? Rather than confronting Mother Catherine directly, Father Ryan traveled to Milwaukee to speak with his superior, Bishop John Henney. The journey took a full day by horseback, the late winter roads alternating between ice and mud. He arrived at the bishop's residence with his resolve firm and his cassock spattered. Bishop Henney received him in a comfortably appointed study, far more luxurious and warmer than Father Ryan's humble parish house. Construction of Milwaukee's new St. John's Cathedral dominated the conversation initially, the bishop proudly showing architectural drawings and discussing funding with animation. It will be the finest cathedral west of New York, Bishop Henny declared, his German accent still pronounced despite decades in America. A proper monument to our faith in this Protestant wilderness. Father Ryan nodded appropriately, waiting for an opening to introduce his concerns. When the bishop finally asked about his parish, the young priest carefully laid out his observations, the dwindling number of nuns at St. Mary's, the inconsistent explanations, and finally, the desperate note from Sister Mary. The bishop's expression shifted as Father Ryan spoke, his initial warmth replaced by a careful neutrality. "These are serious accusations, Father," he said, setting aside the silver cross without examining it closely. "Mother Catherine has explained each transfer to my satisfaction." "But Your Excellency, 8 nuns have disappeared in less than 3 years," Father Ryan pressed. "No documentation has been provided for these transfers. No one has received consistent correspondence from these women after they supposedly left. The frontier missions require educated women," the bishop replied with finality, rising from his chair to indicate the meeting was concluding. "I'll not have you spreading rumors that could damage the church's reputation in this Protestant region. Mother Catherine has been most generous in supporting our cathedral building fund. Her spiritual leadership is beyond reproach." As the bishop ushered him out, he added with a note of warning, "Focus on your parish duties, Father Ryan. Leave the administration of convents to those appointed by God for that purpose." An unauthorized inspection. Father Ryan left the bishop's office discouraged but not deterred. If the proper channels wouldn't address his concerns, he would need to find another way to investigate the mysterious disappearances at St. Mary's. The opportunity arose in March 1858 when Bishop Henny assigned Father Ryan to collect the annual financial reports from religious institutions and parishes throughout the diocese. This official capacity gave him legitimate reason to examine St. Mary's records and perhaps find evidence of what had happened to the missing nuns. The March winds cut through Father Ryan's heavy coat as his horse-drawn buggy approached St. Mary's. The convent looked different somehow. The windows were darker, the gardens more neglected, despite the mild spring weather that should have brought the nuns outdoors for their work. The bell tower that had once rung clearly for each divine office now sounded less frequently, its tone somehow muted. He was met at the door by Sister Elizabeth, whose customary smile seemed strained. Dark circles beneath her eyes suggested sleepless nights, and her typically neat habit showed small signs of neglect, a slight stain on the white collar, a missing pin. "Father Ryan, we weren't expecting you today," she said, her surprise poorly concealed. "Mother Catherine is indisposed today," she continued, leading him to a small, cold parlor rather than the comfortable study where he usually met with the Mother Superior. "She asks that you leave the diocesan forms, and she will complete them by week's end." "I'm afraid the bishop was quite clear," Father Ryan insisted, removing his coat and setting his briefcase on the table. He tried to project an authority he didn't entirely feel, aware that his relatively low position in the church hierarchy and his youth worked against him. "I am to review the records personally this year. Financial irregularities have been discovered in several institutions." Sister Elizabeth's smile vanished entirely. "That won't be possible today. Our bookkeeper, Sister Margaret, is attending to a dying child in the infirmary." "Then I shall wait." Father Ryan settled more firmly in his chair. "Or perhaps I could tour the convent while waiting. It has been some time since I've seen the improvements to the orphanage I've heard so much about." The look that flashed across Sister Elizabeth's face, was it anger? Fear, vanished quickly. "As you wish, Father, though I must ask you to avoid the north wing. We have several cases of influenza there and would not want you exposed." The north wing, where Father Ryan had never been permitted to enter, ostensibly because it contained the nuns' private quarters. His suspicion deepened. The tour revealed a convent functioning far below its reported capacity. Where were the 20 orphans mentioned in Mother Catherine's reports to the diocese? Father Ryan counted only 7 children, all looking frightened and thin. When he attempted to speak with a small girl sweeping the dormitory floor, Sister Elizabeth quickly intervened, sending the child away on an errand. The infirmary, supposedly caring for dozens of local residents, contained only 3 elderly patients, none showing signs of the reported influenza. Sister Margaret was nowhere to be seen despite her supposed attendance on a dying child. Most disturbing was the clear reduction in nuns. Father Ryan had offered Mass at St. Mary's just 3 months earlier and recalled at least 15 nuns in attendance. Today, he counted only 8, including Sister Elizabeth. When he inquired about specific nuns he remembered, Sister Josephine, Sister Rebecca, Sister Claire, he received the same vague responses about special missions and transfers. And Sister Mary Collins, he asked casually as they passed the laundry room, where 2 nuns worked silently at large wash tubs, steam rising around their reddened hands. Sister Elizabeth's step faltered slightly. Sister Mary has been assigned to our mission in St. Louis. She left just last week. Her experience with the orphans made her particularly suited to the work there. Father Ryan nodded, hiding his alarm. The author of the desperate note was now among the disappeared. His suspicions fully aroused, he requested to see the convent's chapel,